Good morning, everybody, and welcome to another Mad Meta Magic, where we try to make the magic meta mad. Now, I saw a 5-0 list recently for Mono Blue Fairy Deep Fiend, or Elder Deep Fae, whatever you want to call it. And it was looking like a pretty good deck. So the idea is we play basically Mono Blue Fairy, counter everything tempo, with Mistbind Click as our top end payoff, tapping all of our opponents' creatures or tapping all of our opponent's lands. Basically, this is a flash time walk on a 4/4 body against the right decks, especially if you play it off Cavern and your opponent can't counter it. But it also has some synergy with Elder Deep Fiend, because these two cards do something very similar to each other, and that is tap or Early Frost or Giga Drowse all of your opponent's lands when you cast them or when they come into play. And it's a very tough top end to actually deal with. Elder Deep Fiend, for us, when we were playing the Dimir Eldrazi deck, is one of the strongest, flash cards that exists in the modern format. Despite its prohibitive mana cost, even when reduced with Emerge, is still quite high, but it is a very, very strong effect. And in the ideal circumstance, we can do things like champion a Fairy Seer, for Mistbind Clicks. We exile Fairy Seer, Mistbind Click comes into play. Next turn, we can Elder Deep Fiend on their upkeep, sacking Mistbind Click, getting back Fairy Seer, scrying, then tapping all of their lands. There's some very, very powerful combos. So our fairies are Fairy Seer to get started on turn 1. It's a 1-mana 2/2 with flying. It's just an evasive attacker, but it's mainly here to help scry to either another land or another card we might need. In the 2-drop spot, we have Spell Stutter Sprite, which is a tribal counter spell. It counters a spell with CMC X or less, where X is the number of fairies you control. Always counters 1 or less, because it itself is a fairy, unless it gets removed in response to the effect. We also have Hypnotic Sprite, which is a 2-mana 2/1 fairy with Mesmeric Glare as an adventure. So for 3 mana, we can counter a spell with CMC 3 or less, which is not bad to have as an additional card advantage type creature. You see this a lot with Bone Crusher Giant, but Bone Crusher Giant is really 2 cards. This card is a little bit different because the cheaper mode is the main mode, which is the creature. In the 3-drop slot, we have Pestermite, just a good flash value, taps any type of permanent, untaps any type of permanent you want. It's good for combat tricks. Brazen Borrower, it's an unsummon as well as a 3/1 flyer for 3, which is very strong. And unlike Vendilion Click, it's not legendary, so it's a very efficient creature even in multiples. And I've already explained Mistbind Click and Elder Deep Fiend. So to support our fairies on turn 1, we have Spell Pierce if we need to counter a non-creature spell early. We have Mana Leak as a 2 because it kind of falls off later. It's not quite as good. We have the full play set of Remands because we are playing 24 lands and we're going to need to be drawing extra cards. We also have Repeal. Repeal can, on occasion, buy us back a Fairy Seer and kind of make a clunky 3-mana Preordain. That sort of a thing, but generally for unsummoning problematic permanents, just buying extra time. In the land slot, we have Cavern of Souls, because we are a tribal fairy deck, and Elder Deep Fiend, while it could be countered if we don't have a Cavern of Souls on Eldrazi, actually is fine because its tap trigger is a cast trigger, so the resolution of Elder Deep Fiend is not tied to tapping my opponent's lands. We have Castle Vantress for the late game. If we get to where we're scrying, we can use our mana on our opponent's end step to just scry and try and get deeper as virtual card advantage. Mutavault is a good support land. It attacks, it blocks, it champions to Mistbind Click. It does a lot. And Sanctum of Ugin, because casting an Elder Deep Fiend and tutoring up an Elder Deep Fiend is broken. So we'll move on to the sideboard. Out of the sideboard, we got 4 Relic of Progenitus for Grave Hate. We have 4 Chalice of the Void versus any Prowess decks, versus Storm, versus other decks that cast a lot of 1-drops. We can cast our 1-drops other than Spell Pierce because we have Cavern, so if we want to, we could still play Fairy Seer in addition to Chalice of the Void, though that's not entirely necessary. I'm not sure how the math works out on what cards work out how. We have Threads of Disloyalty, which we can use to gain control of Death's Shadow, or gain control of Tarmogoyf, or gain control of Scourge of the Skyclaves. It gets a lot of low CMC, high damage beaters that is just a very effective mind control. It's very powerful versus a lot of decks like that. We have Vendilion Click and Teferi Mage of Zalfir versus Control. Teferi basically shutting down our opponent's control deck, if they've got it, by forcing them to play at sorcery speed. Not to mention, a lot of our creatures are wizards, except for Pestermite Brazen Borrower. And Hypnotic Sprite doesn't have a class. But we could name Wizard off of a Cavern of Souls just to cast a fairy. It's very strong. And, of course, Vendilion Click is also a fairy wizard. So, alright, I think that's it for the deck tech. I'll see you guys in round 1. Alright, round 1 will be on the draw. This hand's not amazing. We don't have any turn 1 plays, and we don't have a Spell Pierce, but I don't think it's worth mulliganing. This hand, I think, is fine versus a slower deck, but this is not a slower deck. So we untap, draw an island, play an island, pass the turn. Opponent untaps. Okay, opponent explores after playing a Slayer Stronghold, plays a Talaria West, and passes. We untap and draw Cavern, play an island, pass the turn. We now have Spell Stutter Sprite or Remand. Opponent is going to Summoner's Pact. I think I'm going to Spell Stutter Sprite this. Second Summoner's Pact. Alright, you got it. They get Primeval Titan. They play a Grazer, putting a Golgari Rot Farm into play. They have just enough mana to play Titan, don't they? Who knows? Maybe holding up Remand for Titan was the way to go here, but it sure didn't feel like it. I guess if they did have exactly Titan without Cavern, Remand would have actually lost them the game because they wouldn't have been able to pay for Pact. So yeah, I think not playing Remand there actually killed me. That is unfortunate. Because even if I draw a Mistbind Click or an Elder Deep Fiend, it's not like I can play it. Alright, it was a very quick game. So for our opponent's deck, I think I'm going to bring in a Vendilion Click, and I'm going to drop, I think, a Hypnotic Sprite for it. And we'll try it like this. Alright, I would like to play first. I will keep this. We'll lead on Island, pass the turn. Opponent leads on Castle Garenbrig. Okay. We draw Spell Pierce, so play Castle Vantress, pass the turn. Opponent untaps. They play Amulet, so Spell Pierce Amulet. They play a Boros Garrison, bouncing Castle. We untap, draw Elder Deep Fiend, play Cavern, name Fairy, pass to my opponent's turn on their upkeep, play the Fairy, tap Garrison. Okay. Opponent replays Castle Garenbrig. We untap and draw an island. So play an island, go to combat, attack for 2. Now I can emerge Elder Deep Fiend, but I think it's better to Mistbind Click here. The only way this goes wrong is if my opponent has a path, and if they have a path, they're tapping their bounce land here. So we champion Pestermite, tap all of our opponent's lands, because this is fair and balanced Magic right now. Can't believe they ever printed a card like this that had Flash. We untap and draw a Mutavault, play Mutavault, go to combat, attack for 4, hit them to 14, pass the turn, stop on their upkeep, emerge, sacking Mistbind Click, Elder Deep Fiend, tap all their lands. We get Pestermite back, so we're going to untap a island. We get a 5/6. Opponent passes, because this is fair and balanced Magic. We untap, draw an island, play an island, go to combat, attack for 7. Okay. Stop on my opponent's upkeep, emerge, tapping their lands. Okay. Opponent plays a forest, plays a Grazer, puts nothing into play. Okay. On their end step, repeal Grazer, untap, and that's game. I actually think I should have Chalice in this matchup because of the pacts. Chalice on 0 and Chalice on 1 are both good. So in this case, I'm actually going to cut that Vendilion Click I brought in. I'm going to cut a Remand, a Mana Leak. I'm going to keep Spell Pierce because well, no, I probably should cut a Spell Pierce. Alright, we're going to try it like this now. I really think Chalice on 0 matters against my opponent. Alright, this is about as good of a chance as we're going to get. Okay, opponent starts Slayer Stronghold, Amulet. We untap and draw Spell Stutter Sprite, so play Fairy Seer, go Scrying, Remand and Cavern. I do want Cavern, I'm not sure on this Remand. So I'll put Cavern on top, play Chalice on 0, pass the turn. Opponent plays nothing. We draw Cavern, name Fairy, go to combat, attack for 1. Pass to my opponent's turn. They draw. Alright, they play a Selesnya Sanctuary. They untap it to Amulet. They float the mana. They bounce Sanctuary. They're going to play Dryad. Do we Mana Leak or do we Remand? I think I actually Remand this. Okay. We untap, draw an island, play an island, go to combat, attack for 1, pass the turn. If they pull that exact same stunt, we mana leak, and then next turn we can Brazen Borrower, unsummon Amulet, and Spell Stutter to counter Amulet. Okay. So opponent replays Selesnya Sanctuary, they untap it, float mana, bounce Slayer Stronghold, mana leak Dryad. We untap, draw Mistbind Click. That is good. Play Sanctum, go to combat, attack for 1, Petty Theft Amulet, pass the turn. Opponent untaps, they draw, they play Grazer. That's fine, I think. They can put a land into play tapped. They play Sanctuary, bouncing a land. Presumably they play Amulet. They don't. Okay. We untap. We draw Cavern. So, play an island. Go to combat. Attack for 1. Now we have Borrower plus Spell Stutter. We could counter up to a 3-drop. Oh, that's right, that has reach. I always forget that has reach. I think I'm going to do that, actually. I'm not going to Mistbind here. Opponent plays Castle Garenbrig. They play Karn, Great Creator. Well, I don't have 4 fairy permanents, so I cannot Spell Stutter this. So Karn resolves. Probably going to uptick Destroying Chalice, I imagine. They're going to Wish. Well, let's see what they get. Ensnaring Bridge. Okay, well, we are not scared of an Ensnaring Bridge. At least, not yet. Stop on my opponent's end step. Flash in Borrower. We untap. Draw Fairy Seer. Play Cavern. Name Fairy. Go to combat. Attack Karn. Attack Karn. Okay, opponent blocks Brazen Borrower. Stop on my opponent's upkeep. Mistbind Click. Champion Fairy Seer. Tap my opponent's lands. Okay, opponent draws. They play Slayer Stronghold, they play Amulet. Now I could Spell Stutter Sprite this, but if I do, my opponent can potentially resolve this Ensnaring Bridge. If I don't, they could potentially resolve a Titan and then give it haste. I think I actually have to let this Amulet resolve. We're going to need to draw some good cards, I think. Opponent probably upticks Karn to hit Chalice. Yep. That makes sense to me. Opponent passes. We untap. We draw Spell Pierce. So, go to combat. Attack Karn, attack our opponent. Kill Karn, hit our opponent to 13. Play Fairy Seer, go Scrying. Island to the bottom. Island to the bottom. Pass the turn. Well, we've got Spell Stutter, Spell Pierce, and a Dream. Opponent has a Primeval Titan. We only have 4 Fairy permanents. So they are going to be able to haste a Primeval Titan. They get Cavern on Giant. Presumably just in case we unsummon it. They float mana. They're going to give it haste. They untap Cavern, Boros Garrison bounces, Slayer Stronghold. Opponent goes to combat, attacks us for 8. They get Radiant Fountain and Talaria West. Go untapping some lands. They gain 2 life, go to 15. No blocks, take 8. We go to 12. Okay, opponent floats mana off of Talaria West, untaps Growth Chamber, floats mana off Growth Chamber, picks up Talaria West. They're going to transmute Talaria West, probably for a Summoner's Pact. Yep. Alright. We untap. We draw Brazen Borrower. So, go to combat. Attack with everybody. Hit our opponent down to 7. Pass the turn. The way that this most likely goes wrong is my opponent has a second actual Primeval Titan card in their hand, or multiple Summoner's Pacts. So we Spell Stutter Sprite Summoner's Pact, because that's our hard counter. They play Slayer Stronghold. 6 mana. They have another Primeval Titan. Well, there's nothing we can do about that. So we might be able to survive this with a single disperse off of Brazen Borrower, but it's not likely. I could have actually responded to that trigger and bounced Amulet. That was probably what I was supposed to do. No, actually it wasn't. Opponent is floating mana. They bounce Talaria West. They transmute. This might be for Pact of Negation. Opponent has 3, 4, 5, 6 mana left. If we bounce this Primeval Titan now, we could get around a potential Pact of Negation. If we bounce the one that isn't summoning sick, they have to use their mana to actually make this one be able to attack this turn. I'm pretty sure this is our best bet. Okay, so they Slayer Stronghold that one in response. They're not interested in casting any more Titans this turn. So now they go to... Oh, they transmute. They get another Summoner's Pact. They immediately cast it. So we Spell Pierce, because they could get Dryad here, and if they get Dryad, they can just get Valakut, and kill us. So they're going to pay for it. They do get Dryad. They go to combat. Attack. So they're going to hit us for 8. I don't think they can get the Double Strike land here and activate it. Actually, they might be able to. Sunhome plus... okay, they just get Valakut. It's possible they're not running Sunhome, or they might be able to just get us with Dryad plus Landfall. We go to 4. They play Dryad, and I'm pretty sure they're holding a land because they bounced a bunch of them. Yep. Alright, we're dead. I think I played that as well as I could have. So, alright. Yeah, maybe I was supposed to wait for them to attack and just unsummon the amulet or something, but that was close, and maybe me throwing game 1 there off of that remand was the actual problem. So, I'll see you guys in round 2. Alright, welcome to round 2, everybody. We're on the draw, and I think this hand is a mulligan. There's just too many lands in that hand. There's not enough lands in this one. Going to 5, and I think I've got to keep it. I'm not thrilled about it. So I'm going to put back Hypnotic Sprite because I don't have double blue, and I think Mistbind Click. Okay, opponent starts Tormod's Crypt. That tells me it might be Blue Tron. Darksteel Citadel. It might be Affinity. Oh, is this this Cheerios Affinity? The play your Mirror Enforcer on turn 1. Hope it's good enough. We did actually 3-2 a league with that deck, so I respect it. But was it 4-1? I don't remember. It was a while ago. It was definitely a fun budget bracket busting deck, though. That was for sure. Let's improvise here. Foundry Assembler. It is the deck I was thinking of. Well, the good news is we're playing Chalice against a Cheerios deck. Opponent Salvage Titans. Alright, I like it. So they're going to be hitting us for 9 a turn. Play an island, Fairy Seer. Go Scrying, we do need a land. Too late for remand, island to the top, pass the turn. Opponent plays a Frogmite, they just top decked. They're going to attack us for 9. We take 9 the first time, untap, we draw an island, play an island, pass the turn. Opponent untaps, they play a Paradise Mantle, we don't care. I actually should have spell stuttered that. They go to combat, they swing out, so we chump here, flash in a 1-1, untap, draw an island, play an island, pass the turn. The problem is Mistbind Click and our general tech is not very good against this deck. Mirror Enforcer. Well, I think we've lost game 1. Because we don't have a lot of answers to onboard permanents here. Okay, so what is good and what is bad against our opponent's deck? What's good? Chalice of the Void. Chalice of the Void is very good. Remand is absolutely atrociously bad. Because most of their spells are free, and they have a couple of improvised spells which aren't, but I don't think that actually matters that much. Vendilion Click might be better than something. Threads of Disloyalty is not good. Neither is Relic. Teferi, my opponent plays nothing at instant speed. Vendilion Click might be better than a Mana Leak, but I think we're just going to keep this. Honestly, I'm going to mull till I hit a Chalice, I think. I would like to play first. Mulligan. I think I'm willing to go to 5 and possibly even 4 to find a Chalice. Alright, we found it. Put back Island, put back Chalice. So we play Island, play Chalice on 0, pass the turn. Opponent can now not play any of their mana sources. They play Sanctum. They got a Sanctum. For the record, I think playing Darksteel Citadel is incorrect in my opponent's deck. I am going to keep the same configuration here, but I am not mulliganing to Chalice because we are on the draw and my opponent's going to play all their 0 drops on turn 1 anyway. Man, I wish I had a Hercules Recall. That would really, really top off this deck. Like if Affinity was actually a deck normally. This hand, I think, is pretty bad. So we're going to have to try and win this game fair and square. There'll be no mystical, magical sideboard tutelage. Unless my opponent has to mulligan to find a decent hand. My opponent keeps 7 cards. I am actually going to mulligan. I do kind of like Spell Pierce. I'm going to put back Elder Deep Fiend, because we're pretty far off of an Elder Deep Fiend. There's a chance that my opponent doesn't have the correct number of non-creature spells, and needs to, like, cycle this Bauble as an example. It's not super huge, but it is non-zero. They'll probably play Scared of Chalice and dump as much as they can, but they may not have enough to play, like, Foundry, Denizen, and all that stuff yet. We'll see. Okay, it looks like they do. And in that case, we are actually in trouble. So we untap, draw an island, play an island, and pass. Alright. Opponent goes to combat, attacks us for 6. Take 6, go to 14. And our opponent passes. We untap and draw an island, play Fairy Seer, go Scrying, Spell Stutter Sprite to the bottom, I am going to keep Chalice. If they cast any non-creature spell, we Spell Pierce. So Spell Pierce, Briber's Purse. This way they can't play Mirror Enforcer, they can't play the Juggernaut with Improvise, the 7/5 for 7. If they attack, we block Memnite 100%. Okay, we untap, play an island, play Chalice on 0, pass the turn. Opponent untaps. They're going to Salvage Titan. That is unfortunate. So I think I actually will need to top deck, what's it called? Pestermite. And then we get a top deck other good stuff. Brazen Borrower here would be quite good. We did not get a Brazen Borrower. Play an island. Pass the turn. Now we might need Pestermite or Brazen Borrower to stay alive. We'll lose into a meme deck. But to be fair, like, we're losing to our opponent's deck because our opponent's deck does not care about the fact we have counter spells. My opponent's deck plays their entire hand on turn 0. So it kind of hard counters this strategy. Maybe I should have mulliganed to Chalice again, but I don't think that was correct because if my opponent keeps a hand of 7, and they should, the vast majority of hands we have just don't matter. Alright, losing to a meme deck. You know what? I would rather lose to that deck every day of the week than have to play one more Blitz matchup, so I'm okay with that. I'll see you guys in round 3. Alright, welcome to round 3. We've not been getting very lucky with our play luck, but I am going to keep this hand. Kind of hoping the bounce spells are going to be enough. Opponent starts on Forest, Fetch, Arbor Elf. Alright, really hoping this is... I'm actually kind of hoping this is Heliod and not Ponza, but of course it would be Ponza. They shock a Stomping Ground, which means we're in for a World of Hurt. They play Utopia Sprawl. They could have had 4 mana instead of 3. They play Wrenn 6. Okay. They pick up a fetch land. We untap. We draw Elder Deep Fiend. So, play an island. Pass the turn. Stop on my opponent's upkeep. Repeal Arbor Elf. Because that at least has Summoning Sickness. We don't have an actual counterspell. So they play their Wooded Foothills and they fetch Bloodbraid into Colossus. Alright, I'm not going to show my opponent much else of what's going on here. There's some chance I actually want Chalice, but I think the correct choice is probably just running it back as it is, actually. I don't think we actually sideboard for this matchup. Like, getting a Chalice and putting it on 1 could potentially be good, but really we need to be on the play and we need to have a lot of early interaction. This hand is not one of those things I said. This hand is much closer, so I will keep this and put back an Elder Deep Fiend. Now, I'm not going to play Fairy Seer right away. I think holding up Spell Pierce in case my opponent starts on Utopia Sprawl is a lot stronger. Yep. So we untap. We draw Pestermite. Play an island, pass the turn. Opponent untaps. They play a Wooded Foothills. They fetch with Wooded Foothills. They get a mountain. And they are now passing. We need to draw land. There's a land. So play a Mutavault, play Fairy Seer, go Scrying. There's a Mistbind click and a Cavern of Souls. I'm honestly going to put both of those back. Pass the turn. Okay. Opponent untaps. They're going to stomp the Fairy Seer. That's fine. They untap. They draw. They play a Windswept Heath. They pass the turn. They get a Forest. They Blood Moon us. We don't really care, right? I mean, I'm still going to remand. Actually, because I do need to draw both the land and the Mistbind Click this turn. So play Cavern, play name Fairy. Then we're going to pass. We could tap a land here, but I don't think it's correct. Alright. I will tap that forest in response. They float it so that they can have the mana. We will not untap the forest. The Utopia Sprawl. They have another stomp. That is quite unfortunate. Alright, we untap. We draw a land. Pass the turn. Stop on my opponent's upkeep. Animate Mutavault. Mistbind Click. If they kill Mutavault, we lose Mistbind Click. Okay, Mistbind Click enters the battlefield. Champion a Fairy. Champion the Mutavault. Tap my opponent's lands. Alright. They play a Windswept Teeth. Then they pass. We untap and draw Mutavault. So play Mutavault. Go to combat. Attack for 4. Hit our opponent to 14. Pass the turn. Okay. They sack Windswept Teeth. They get a Stomping Ground tapped. They untap. So emerge Elder Deep Fiend. Tap their lands. We get back Mutavault, by the way. Opponent plays a Windswept Teeth. We untap. Opponent scoops. Nice. Well, that worked out in our favor. I kind of want Chalice. I'm going to try bringing in 2 Chalice for a Fairy Seer and a Hypnotic Sprite. I'm try it like this. Because, like, countering my opponent's lightning bolts and stuff seems kind of important. This hand is not keepable. This hand might be keepable. I'm going to put back a Mutavault. Opponent starts Windswept Teeth, cracks it. Opponent mulligan to 5. They play Utopia Sprawl. We untap, draw Cavern, play an island, pass the turn. Opponent untaps, plays a Stomping Ground tapped, then plays Renin 6, which we will Spell Pierce. Untap, we draw Mistbind Click. Play an island, pass the turn. I'm not going to play Mutavault just in case my opponent has Pillage. Opponent plays Verdant Catacombs, cracks Verdant Catacombs. 4 mana, Bloodbraid, Karn. Okay. So opponent resolves Karn. They're going to wish for Liquid Metal Coating. So on their end step, flash Spell Stutter. We untap. We draw Mistbind Click. Play Mutavault. Go to combat. Attack Karn. So this is kind of a trick. And hopefully our opponent doesn't have Liquid Metal Coating Burn Spell in hand. If they play Liquid Metal Coating and activate it targeting Mutavault, we're going to animate Mutavault in response to them activating Coating. Okay. So they're going to target the island. Yeah, because Karn can't uptick and target a creature artifact. They blow up an island. Okay, they do not have... Okay, they do have Blood Moon. That is a enormous problem. What happens if I animate in response here? It's a 2/2 mountain. We untap. We draw Pestermite, which thankfully we can play. Go to combat. Attack Karn. The problem is my opponent is going to get our last island out of this deal. So stop on their upkeep. I think the correct choice is to flash in Pestermite and tap the Utopia Sprawled land. Because that stops my opponent from, like, drawing a Glorybringer. Alright. Pass to my opponent's main phase. They gotta have nothing here. Like, they gotta have drawn a land or another Blood Moon. They drew a Lightning Bolt. That was exactly what we were trying to avoid. And it didn't matter when we cast that. It just wasn't gonna work. Alright. And we're done. This deck really, really wants to be on the play. It is so good when you're on the play. Look at how good it is when you're on the play. But we are not frequently getting on the play. So I'll see you guys in round 4. Alright, round 4, and we are on the draw again. So we're going to keep. Opponent starts Glacial Fortress tapped. We draw Fairy Seer. Play an island, pass the turn. Opponent untaps, they draw. They play Polluted Delta, and they pass. We untap. We draw an island. Play an island. Play Fairy Seer. Go Scrying. Repeal to the bottom, Remand to the bottom. Pass the turn. Opponent cracks Polluted Delta. It's a Watery Grave tapped. Then they opt. So it's looking like Esper Control. They play River of Tears, and they are passing. We untap. We draw Mana Leak. Play an island. Go to combat. Attack them for 1. Opponent takes 1. Play Fairy Seer. Go Scrying. Mistbind Click to the top. Castle Vantress on top of that. Okay. So opponent, gonna Archmage's Charm to draw 2 cards. That's fine. Opponent untaps. They draw. They play a Flooded Strand. Pass the turn. We untap. Draw Castle Vantress. Play Castle Vantress, go to combat, attack our opponent for 2. My opponent is going to Kaya's Guile. We'll Spell Pierce. I don't really want to remand that because that spell's really good against us. They take 2 and go to 16. Pass to our opponent. They crack Flooded Strand, going down to 15. They get a Hallowed Fountain tapped. They untap. I mean, if they cast a Wrath, we just flash Brazen Borrower on their end step. Opponent plays a Swamp and is now passing. We untap. We draw Mistbind Click. Go to combat. Attack for 2. Opponent no blocks. They go to 13. Pass to our end step. They're going to Esper Charm to draw cards. That's fine. So if they do nothing else, I think I'm going to Mistbind Click on their upkeep. If nothing else, just to force them to counter. I really, really wish I had a Cavern right now. They are going to Fatal Push. Okay. I'm not going to Mistbind Click now, because with only one fairy on board and my opponent having Fatal Push and Path, they could just as easily counter Mistbind Click by killing our creature. Okay. Stop on my opponent's end step. Flash Brazen Borrower. I am expecting this to get countered or killed. Surprisingly, it does not. We untap, draw Sanctum, play Sanctum, go to combat, attack for 4. Opponent has Go for the Throat. I think I'm going to remand, because I do need to draw, I was going to say more cards for sure. They replay Go for the Throat, I think we just wait. I could Mana Leak here to try and push damage. I mean, I guess Mana Leak is going to be falling off here pretty quick, because my opponent has so much mana. But they've drawn so many cards, I think the odds of them having something that works is pretty high. So maybe I should have actually held that remand, but pass the turn. Opponent draws and plays a land. Opponent plays Jace. We'll Mana Leak. Yeah, I should have kept the remand. I should have just let the Go for the Throat go through. Alright, they actually let the Mana Leak happen. They don't pay for it. Opponent refuses to tap out. Alright. We untap and draw Pestermite. So play Sanctum, go to combat, attack for 1, take our opponent to 11, pass the turn, stop on my opponent's upkeep, Pestermite. Opponent is going to drown in the lock. Okay. Then they pass? So I imagine they play something else here. I really want to be able to land another fairy before casting a Mistbind Click, just because I'm pretty sure my opponent has another removal spell, and they're saving it because why would they just cast a removal spell immediately on a 1/1 here? Okay, opponent lets us untap. We draw Elder Deep Fiend. Go to combat. Attack for 1. Get them down to 10. Pass the turn. I'm going to go for the Mistbind Click on the upkeep. Hopefully they don't have it. And Emerge only lets you sack 1 creature. It's not like Offering where you can sack any number. Okay, so they're going to gain control of our Fairy Seer here, which means Mistbind Click is going to enter the battlefield. And unfortunately, we cannot... because this is 7, we would need 3 mana. It's really unfortunate. We cannot, so we lose it. Opponent draws a card. We untap. We draw an island. Play an island. Pass the turn. We're going to be activating Castle Vantress this turn. Okay, opponent plays Jace the Mind Sculptor. They Brainstorm. No attacks. Go Scrying on their end step. Spell Stutter and Hypnotic Sprite. I think we keep Spell Stutter. Untap. Draw Spell Stutter. Pass the turn. Opponent is going to opt. So Spell Stutter. Counter the opt. Move to their upkeep. Attempt a Mistbind Click. Alright. We'll go to next round. By round, I mean game. So versus control, we bring in Teferi, we bring in Vendilion Click. Gonna cut... oh, I don't know what I cut here, actually. It's probably a Repeal and like a Pestermite And I'll go with a maybe like a I think Mana Leak. All right, we'll be on the play this time, and I really like this hand, so we're gonna keep. We're gonna go ahead and start on an island, pass the turn. Opponent untaps. They play Flooded Strand, then they pass. Okay, we untap. We draw Elder Deep Fiend. Play Cavern on Wizard. Pass the turn. And the reason I'm doing that is because I'm foreseeing eventually playing a Teferi. So opponent cracks Flooded Strand. Gets a Watery Grave tapped. They untap. They draw. They play a Hollowed Fountain tapped. Then they pass. We untap. We draw Hypnotic Sprite. Play an island. Pass the turn. Opponent untaps. They play Sunken Ruins. Then they pass. We untap. We draw an island. Play an island. Pass the turn. Opponent untaps. They play a Flooded Strand. And they pass. We untap. Draw an island. Play an island. Actually, should have played Castle Vantress there, in case I wanted to play nothing again this turn. Then I could at least scry. So, that's actually a mistake. Okay, opponent Archmage's Charm to draw cards. Sure. They untap. They play a Flooded Strand. And they're thinking. Okay. They crack Flooded Strand. And then they are passing. On their end step, I am going to try and flash Brazen Borrower. They're going to Mystically Dispute this. Okay. We're not paying for it. We untap and draw Teferi. Play Castle Vantress. Pass the turn. Well, Teferi should make our life a lot easier in a lot of ways. The only issue is if my opponent has exactly a Vendilion Click. If they Cryptic Command bouncing our Cavern, that's also bad. Kaya's Guile, exiling our grave, making a Spirit. That's fine. When it goes to combat, attacks for 1. Hits us to 19. Okay. On their end step, flash into Teferi, Mage of Zalfir. So if they want to do anything, they got to do it right now. Alright. We untap. We draw an island. Play an island. Go to combat. Attack our opponent for 3. Opponent takes 3, they're going to go to 15. So we play Hypnotic Sprite. Everything we have has flash, so it doesn't really matter. Okay. Stop on my opponent's upkeep. Play a Mistbind Click. Champion Hypnotic Sprite. Tap all of my opponent's lands. They draw. They don't do anything. We untap. Well, they discard to hand size. We draw Repeal. So begin by repealing the token. We get another Mistbind Click. Go to combat. Hit our opponent for 7. They go to 8. Stop on their upkeep. Flash in Spell Stutter Sprite. Flash in another Mistbind Click. And opponent scoops. Alright. I'm going to restart the client here, and we're going to, I think, continue on exactly as planned. I am really tempted to keep this hand in Game 3 here. Because Fairy Seer should find us another land. We're a 24 land deck. The problem is, if it doesn't, and we only have Spell Pierce, we are screwed. They're going to keep 7. I think even on the draw, I'm going to mulligan. Mulligan again. Alright, well, now I have to keep an even worse version of my original hand. So, I guess that's just my life now. Okay, opponent starts a Watery Grave, untapped. We draw an island. Pass the turn. Opponent opts. They untap. They draw. They play a Polluted Delta and pass. We untap and draw Castle Vantress, so we play it. Pass the turn. Opponent cracks Polluted Delta, gets a Hollowed Fountain. They untap. They play an island, and then they pass. We untap and draw Mutavault. Play Mutavault. Pass the turn. Opponent is playing a Snapcaster Mage for an opt. Probably playing into a Fatal Push, but I'm going to Spell Stutter Sprite this. Yep, okay. So opponent gets a 2-1, we have a 1-1. I unnecessarily am throwing mana away against my opponent. And I kind of tap down on a critical turn because... I considered none of this before making this play because I'm tired and it's getting late. And this is a very long match, but like... It's a critical turn because my opponent's on 4, so like my opponent could just like play a land, play Jace, and that would be a nightmare. They attack. I'm not going to trade. We untap. We draw a Brazen Borrower, play an island, go to combat. Attack for 1. Pass the turn. Opponent is going to Snapcaster, so I'm going to Spell Stutter Sprite the Snapcaster. This time I have Spell Pierce. My opponent is very close to running completely out of cards. Double blue, they Mystical Dispute, so Spell Pierce. Alright. And we get there. Opponent untaps. They draw. They play a land. They go to combat and attack. This time I will block and trade. We untap, draw Spell Stutter Sprite. Opponent is going to click us. So, play Pestermite. If I'd had that last mana, I could have Pestermited, untapped, and Spell Stutter Sprite their click. Tap the click. Opponent sees we have Brazen Borrower, and... Actually, what I should have done is probably untapped a land, because if my opponent threw back Brazen Borrower, or threw back Spell Stutter, I could have drawn a land and then cast whichever one I had left. That would have been smarter. But once again, not thinking through my plays. Okay, they put back Spell Stutter Sprite. I really, really should have untapped a land. Alright, no attacks, we'll just pass. We're going to F6 through our opponent's turn. They have Go for the Throat. As their last card, they are officially in top deck mode. Opponent untaps. They drew something they can play. This is really bad. Archmage's Charm, they draw cards. That's a pretty good top deck. No attacks for our opponent. We untap, we draw Brazen Borrower. Go to combat. Attack for 1. Opponent goes to 15. Pass to them. They untap. They play a land. They go to combat. They're attacking us for 3. Flash in Brazen Borrower. Trade. They crack Polluted Delta. They get an island. Maximum value Kaya's Guile. Alright, that's pretty bad. We untap. Draw Fairy Seer. Petty Theft. Get rid of the token. Fairy Seer, go scrying. Fairy Seer to the bottom, island to the top. Pass the turn. Okay. Opponent untaps, they draw a card, and they're passing. We draw an island. Play an island, go to combat. Attack for 1. Opponent goes to 17. We pass. They untap, they draw. Flash in Brazen Borrower. They are going to Cryptic Command, counter, and draw. I cannot Spell Pierce. The Spell Pierce is just getting worse all the time. We untap, we draw an island. Well, now we can at least start activating Castle Vantress. Go to combat. Hit them for 1. Opponent goes down to 16. Opponent untaps, they draw. They play a Glacial Fortress. They play Jace the Mind Sculptor. Brainstorm. Then they pass. And on their end step, scry. Castle Vantress to the bottom, Brazen Borrower to the top. We untap. Draw Brazen Borrower. Go to combat. Attack our opponent for 1. They go to 15. They are going to Kaya's Guile, which we will Spell Pierce. Okay. Opponent untaps. They draw a card. They're going to Fate Seal us. Don't know how I feel about that. I think that's kind of a desperation play because they're so low on the clock. But they're wasting a lot of time if that's the case. Like, we're still technically in this game, even with our opponent having an active Jace. They're going to Fatal Push our guy, so I'm going to Petty Theft their Jace. Have a Drown in the lock, maybe? Force a Negation, hard cast, okay. That exiles. Okay. We untap. We draw an island. Play an island. Pass the turn. They untap. They draw a card. They Fate Seal us with Jace. Activate Castle. Remand to the bottom. Elder Deep Fiend to the bottom. Untap. We draw Remand. Pass the turn. Opponent untaps. They Fate Seal us. They play a Flooded Strand. And they pass. Pestermite, I will leave on top. Island to the bottom, Pestermite to the top. We untap. Draw Pestermite. Opponent untaps. They draw. They Fate Seal us. They play a Watery Grave tapped. Pass to the end step. Flash Pestermite. If they counterspell Pestermite, we remand our own Pestermite. Okay. Archmage's Charm fizzles. We untap. This is minus 13, minus 12. So we need to stick something that'll deal damage here. Play an island. Play Hypnotic Sprite. Pass the turn. Opponent untaps. They draw. They cast a Damnation. They uptick Jace to 13. Their last card in hand has to be a counterspell or an answer to Pestermite. Flash in Pestermite. Tap Glacial Fortress. They crack Flooded Strand in response, so they have a Fatal Push. Wow, damn. We untap. We draw Cavern. Okay. Leave Cavern in her hand. Pass the turn. Oh, shit. They're not Fate Sealing. Okay, put these cards at the bottom. Doesn't matter. Game is lagging. What's happening? What's happening? Alright, we're just gonna die, because I don't think my opponent can spend 5 seconds on their clock, actually. Oh, shit. Fairy. Pass the turn. Alright, well, opponent ran out of clock. We should have lost that, but... Okay. On to round 5. Alright, round 5, we're against a Lurrus deck, and we're on the draw again. We will be keeping this hand. Opponent leads on Blooming Marsh, Hex Drinker. Okay. We untap, draw Spellstutter Sprite, play Fairy Seer, go Scryan, Spell Pierce and Sanctum of Ugin, Spell Pierce to the bottom, Sanctum to the top. Pass the turn. If my opponent attacks with Hex Drinker, we block, very obviously. Opponent plays Blooming Marsh into a Tarmogoyf. Okay. No attacks for the opponent. Play an island, pass the turn. No attacks for us. Opponent might just play a land and like level up, level up, level up. That would actually be pretty good against what we're doing right now. Opponent plays Ghost Quarter. They're going to Thoughtseize us, so Spellstutter Sprite, counter Thoughtseize. Opponent is going to attack us for 1. We're not going to block because my opponent could Ghost Quarter. Yeah, no blocks. We go to 19, and then our opponent levels up, We untap, draw an island, play an island, go to combat, attack our opponent for 2. They go to 18, pass the turn. Opponent untaps. Okay. They level up Hex Drinker, and they go to combat. So play Pestermite, tap Hex Drinker, they attack for 1. No blocks. Opponent could have an instant. We take 1, go to 18. We untap and draw Brazen Borrower. So play Sanctum of Ugin, go to combat, attack for 4. Opponent goes to 14. Pass the turn. Stop on our opponent's upkeep. Let's go ahead and emerge Elder Deep Fiend. Tap, 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 tap. Okay. I am going to sack Sanctum, get Elder Deep Fiend. So tap all relevant permanents, at least right now. Get a 5/6. So I'd really like to draw a land now. Opponent Ghost Quarters themselves and scoops. We got there, even on the draw. It's quite good. So versus our opponent's deck, we definitely want Threads of Disloyalty, and I kind of think we want Chalice. Spell Pierce, while good, I think is a little bit less good. Actually, I may still want Chalice, and I may still want Spell Pierce, and I may want to cut like Hypnotic Sprite or Mana Leak. I think I'm going to cut Hypnotic Sprite and bring Spell Pierce back in, and instead I can cut like an Island. Maybe Pestermite? Try it like this. Okay. As long as we don't get Thoughtseize turn 1, this hand is great. Okay. Opponent starts Verdant Catacombs, fetches, shocks an Overgrown Tomb, plays a Hexdrinker. We untap, draw an island, play an island, pass the turn. Now I kind of hope that they Thoughtseize on turn 2, so we can Spell Pierce the Thoughtseize, then we can play Chalice. Opponent goes to combat, attacks for 2. If they're stuck on 1 land, that's amazing. Because our only answer to this Hexdrinker right now is Brazen Borrower. Okay, Tarmogoyf. We untap. We draw a Mistbind Click. They have not leveled up Hexdrinker, so I really hope they don't have a 3rd land. Play Mutavault. Chalice on 1. Pass the turn. They play a Blooming Marsh. So the bad news is, it looks like my opponent can just, will probably just level up Hexdrinker 3 times. Or not. They attack us for 3, we go to 15. We untap. Draw Brazen Borrower. Play an island. Pass the turn. They're going to Assassin's Trophy, so we Spell Pierce. We don't Spell Pierce. Because I'm dumb. What do we do instead of Spell Pierce now? We get a land, that's what we do. Get our island. Yep, seems good. Opponent untaps. They play a Ghost Quarter. They level up, level up, level up. Yeet. Okay, level up Fizzles. Then they just replay Hexdrinker. They're going to hit us for 3. We go to 12. We untap and draw Brazen Borrower. Play Cavern. Name Fairy. Pass the turn. Opponent untaps. They level up, level up, level up. Crap! I clicked through that and I shouldn't have. That's a problem. Opponent goes to combat. They attack us for 7. Yeet. Get hit for 4, go to 8. Opponent plays a Verdant Catacombs, cracks Verdant Catacombs, gets Forest, plays Tarmogoyf, we Brazen Borrower. Okay. Untap, draw Elder Deep Fiend. So go to combat, attack our opponent for 3. Okay, opponent takes 3. They go to 13, so we stop on their upkeep. Then we Mistbind Click. They're going to Ghost Quarter us. We get an island. And they're going to Fatal Push our Fairy. So we're dead. It's kind of what I was worried about, but I was hoping with the Mutavault and the Fairy on board we'd be fine. Though that's my fault for messing up the unsummon. Alright, we're going to run it back. Alright, we will be on the play. This is not a keepable hand, so we have to mulligan. And I will keep this. I will be putting back... Ooh, I think Spell Pierce. I really want to lead on this Fairy Seer. The only way this hand got better is if I had Cavern, because then I could put back either another land or like the Mana Leak. We could play the island, leave up Spell Pierce for a Thoughtseize, and then Chalice on 1. But play an island, play a Fairy Seer. Threads of Disloyalty and Brazen Borrower. Brazen Borrower to the bottom, Threads of Disloyalty I'm going to put on top. Pass the turn. Okay, we get Inquisitioned. Presumably, I think they take Chalice here, but that leaves us with Mana Leak if they do. They take Chalice. We untap. We draw Threads of Disloyalty. Play Castle Vantress. Go to combat. Attack for 1. I could repeal my own Fairy Seer if I have to. I'm not above that. But it plays a Verdant Catacombs. They're going to play a Hexdrinker. Yeah, I'm going to Mana Leak. We untap, draw Mutavault, play Mutavault, go to combat, attack for 1. Opponent goes down to 18. They crack Verdant Catacombs for an Overgrown Tomb tapped. Opponent untaps, they draw, they play a Swamp, they play a Tarmogoyf, and they pass. I think I am going to repeal my own Fairy Seer. Okay, they Fatal Push. We lose Repeal, untap, draw Chalice. I think I can take 1 hit from Tarmogoyf safely, so I'm going to play Chalice on 1. We're going to shut off their Fatal Pushes, their Hand Hate, their Hexdrinkers. Hopefully it's enough. If they just have Assassin's Trophy, Thoughtseize as their last 2 cards in hand, then I guess I deserve to lose. Opponent untaps and draws. They play Polluted Delta. They go to combat, hit us for 5, take 5, go to 15. And they play Tarmogoyf number 2. We untap, draw Sanctum, play Sanctum, Threads of Disloyalty, take Tarmogoyf, pass the turn. They play Mishra's Bauble. They crack Mishra's Bauble. They crack Polluted Delta. They get an Overgrown Tomb tapped. They pass the turn. We untap. They draw a card. We draw Repeal. Pass the turn. When an untaps, plays a forest, plays a Scavenging Ooze. I mean, I think they just start eating creatures, right? I guess there's no real reason for them to do it at instant speed. They can wait. So they do. We untap, draw Spell Stutter Sprite, pass the turn. They eat Hex Drinker, gain a life. They eat Fairy Seer, gain a life. They eat Bauble. Okay. So they untap, they draw. They eat Chalice, so they're shrinking the Goyfs to be smaller than the Ooze. They go to combat. They attack and attack. Block the Goyf with the Goyf. Take 4, go to 11. They play Treetop Village. So on their end step, repeal Scavenging Ooze. We get another Threads of Disloyalty. Untap and draw an island. Play an island, pass the turn. So we know our opponent's holding Scavenging Ooze, 1 unknown. Opponent untaps and draws. They play Scavenging Ooze. Animate Mutavault. Spell Stutter. Game is over. So we 2 and 3. I think we technically should have 1 and 4'd there. But importantly, we won a game of every single match that we played, and generally we won almost any game we were on the play, except against the rock player at the end there. I kind of threw, and had I played a little bit differently versus the control player, I might have actually had a better chance. But this deck actually feels really powerful. The problem is you basically have to be on the play to win, and I think the case is because we're not playing Force of Negation, and I don't think we necessarily need to. I think the deck is very, very strong. I just don't know what else it plays. Because, so there's Fairy Miscreant, which is another 1-drop we could be playing that draws cards, but this deck plays 24 lands. Because we're drawing extra cards off Remand, we're scrying off of our 1-drop, we're drawing extra cards off of Repeal, and we really don't need to be drawing extra cards off of a bad 1/1 for 1 like Fairy Miscreant. We don't need I'm not really sure we need Force of Negation. We might want it in the sideboard if we have access to it, but Chalice of the Void felt powerful enough most of the time. We could go probably as low as 23 land, although we did have a little bit of mana trouble. The primary game plan of just curving out, play in your Fairy Seer, then leave up Mana Leak or Remand, or Spell Stutter Sprite on turn 2, doing something on turn 3, and then Mistbind Click, tap your lands, untap, swing, Mistbind Click again, Elder Deep Fiend again, tap all your lands, untap, swing, these are basically Time Walks that deal damage. They are Time Walks that are a 4/4 and a 5/6 respectively. And that is an incredibly powerful place to be in a tempo deck. I'm not really sure how I would improve this list. You could probably play something like Commandeer out of the side if you ended up against Tron, but honestly I think this deck would pulverize Tron just as the way it is in the main deck. Teferi Mage of Zalfir was very important in the control matchup. Threads of Disloyalty is basically how we beat Tarmogoyf. Vendilion Click was nice. We're not going to beat a deck like Dredge without relics. And I really like Chalice of the Void. I mean, even playing it on 0 versus some decks is nice, just to stop them from drawing a million extra cards. The biggest problem that I see with this deck is we're not playing Snapcaster, but there's no room for Snapcaster. We really need our creatures to be fairies for Mistbind Click. So, the other big problem that I see with this deck is we're not playing Bitter Blossom, and we could make room for Bitter Blossom if we made the mana base a little more painful, if we were playing Darkslick Shores, because we don't really need islands specifically. We could drop the Hypnotic Sprites and maybe a Remand or a Repeal or something like that, or even a land. But tapping out on turn 2 is not something we wanted to do very frequently. There were a couple of times where I think we played Hypnotic Sprite on curve, but on turn 2, it's almost universally better to leave up Mana Leak, Remand, etc. So even if you did have Bitter Blossom, you wouldn't play it until late. It would be very bad in the aggressive matchups, and I think if you're playing Bitter Blossom, playing Blue-Black Fairies is a different deck than this one here. So I'm really not sure. It's quite late, so I'm gonna quit rambling and jumping around. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this content. If you did, please leave a like, drop a comment, subscribe to the channel if you're so inclined, and remember you can follow me on Twitch. Same username over there as you find me on here. I stream Wednesdays at 6 p.m. Mountain Time, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. The last few times have been earlier than that. And I want you to know that you're all wonderful human beings. Thanks for watching. Bye! Hey, just wanted to give a shout out to my patrons for the month of May. If you want to support my channel directly and have your name show up in this list, there's a link to my Patreon in the description down below. Thank you all.